Welcome to episode 431 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro Podcast, recorded live on June 26, 2026. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, Ben and Scott get into why agent governance is quickly becoming one of the most pressing challenges for Microsoft 365 administrators, as agentic workflows become more common across Copilot Studio, and third-party platforms. Organizations are dealing with a sprawl problem that looks familiar, but hits differently. Let's dive in as we talk about Copilot agents and the similarities and differences to enterprise apps.
Can I give you a quick rant?
I don't know. Is it going to make me start ranting? Is this going to be the episode where Scott rants and Ben gets ranting? All right. What's your rant?
I happen to have an email address, an Outlook.com email address that is a very short handle, and it's a very common thing, but it's kind of like a vanity handle, whatever. But it would be something that's pretty common, especially if your name was Scott and your last initial started with an H. So I have this thing where I don't understand why people use this email address, which is my email address, to be very clear. Like, it's all locked down to me. I've got all my YubiKeys, authenticator. Like, I closely monitor the logins because I do get these weird, like, who somebody's trying to log into your account kinds of things, right? With password sprays and everything like that. But so it's a real email address. I use it like it's a real email address. Unfortunately, I have this issue where other people are also using it as a real email address. Like, I had somebody the other day went and signed up for a Walmart account. So they signed up for a Walmart account. Somehow they were able to sign up for a Walmart account, authenticate with their phone number to that. Like, they didn't need to get like the access code out of email or things like that. And then now they've got a Walmart account and they're making purchases on it. And I'm getting like the invoices and the receipts. Normally what I can do is when I get these kinds of things, I go and I say, hey, I forgot my password and I request the account to be deleted, or I just change the password to something that's like black hole. It's like, I'm not a smart person and use somebody else's email address to sign up for this account. Like it's just this big long string that can be crammed in there. But the problem I'm running into lately is there are sites like Walmart. I've got PayPal kicking around, a couple of banks that people have signed up for, like stuff that I should not be getting, right? So, but I can't go in and I can't request the deletion of the account. So like Walmart, you go in and you say, hey, here's my email address, send me a code. It says, great, I sent you a code, but you have to authenticate with your phone. Like, well, I don't have my phone, right? Because it's not my phone, it's somebody else's phone that I put in there. So I have this email address that more and more I cannot use for anything personal because there's so many other people in the world with the same first name and last initial that are using it for all their stuff and getting it pushed through. I have like Walmart account, bank accounts. I have a PayPal account in the UK that somebody signed up for, like can't get into. I had this week, somebody did Instacart and another person did Grubhub and signed up for Grubhub Plus. Cool. It's really weird. And I would understand like common email address, like first, last initial, blah, blah, blah. Like somebody's just pumping it in to sign into Wi-Fi somewhere randomly, right? And they don't care. And like, hey, I'll go spam this other person kind of thing.
But these are like legit accounts.
These are legitimate things. People are buying stuff. They're getting bank accounts. There's some guy in Iowa who runs an entire survey business. And I'm getting all his invoices and all the surveys that he's like sending back and forth to the companies that he's working with. Like, I don't understand how this is the state of the world. It's so strange to me.
You said you weren't going to get me ranting, but this is going to be an interesting one, I think, that's going to come up. Not because you mentioned it in here. It was like a sub-bullet of what you said when you talked about you needed your phone for authentication. Is my problem is I have password lists set up a lot of my accounts because I don't want to type in a password. And I'm curious if you start seeing this, the amount of prompts that I get in Authenticator because, and I've had a client that had this too with one of their email accounts, because nobody needs a password. because it relies on the push notification, I get spammed with authenticator requests, and it's not approve or deny, it's number matching ones. And I'm like, okay, I don't think this was me. Sometimes it's close to the same time I do it. But now I've started seeing it's like from Germany, and it's from the US, and it's from here, and it's from there, and there's no way to stop it. Like, I can't go change a password. I can't go change my authenticator app. Like, in this world of passwordless, I feel like these authenticator spamming number matching things are just going to get annoying. Like,
they are very annoying. So I have the same problem, again, on my Outlook account, but mine aren't number matches. So the problem is the way Microsoft does it, even if somebody happens to find a way in, like Microsoft's rationale is like, hey, we're still sending you the push notification, right? So therefore it's up to you to approve or deny. But I don't know if the push notification, like, I know which ones are from me in the moment as a number match. Like, that's very clear.
Yep.
You might have something in the background. So like, for example, for me, I sign into my Outlook.com account through Outlook on my desktop. Makes sense, right? It might be Outlook just trying to re-authenticate. It might be my iPhone trying to re-authenticate. It might be my tablet or another computer. Like, could be some service I signed up for and I gave permission to read my, but you don't know what it is. And Microsoft they used to publish all the security information. So you could go in and you could go like account.microsoft and you could see all the sign-ins and you could see where they were coming from. That got so noisy that they stopped publishing those. So now I get all these push notifications. I get all these authenticator prompts, and I have no way to even know where they're coming from. Like, I don't even know if they're coming from Russia or China or the United States or anything else anywhere. Because like, I'll tell you, like, if I go and look, I was just doing this before I hopped on because I was trying to clean up some of these emails out of that mailbox. So I went and looked. The only login that shows up when I go to account.microsoft.com for that Microsoft account, the only login that I see is one login from today.
Okay.
I authenticate to that account a ton of times a day, and from my iPhone. And so like, my iPhone's running Defender and I have a VPN client on there. So theoretically, my iPhone should be showing up as a separate login, like being routed through like Defender in like Seattle, where the VPN location is. Or if I hop onto Tailscale and I happen to have an exit node at another location, shouldn't like the login thing, when I get reprompted for auth, shouldn't it show me that I relogged in from a new location? Like, they just like masked all that information and hid it away. I get why it was noise for customers. I bet it was a ton of telemetry for them to collect as well and have to kind of store and push out and surface and query and all those kinds of things. But in this world of like passwordless, you tie a phone number to your account, it's no longer just a password kind of thing. It's rough, especially when, at least in my case, for people who haven't gone through this, it stinks when somebody else is using your email address. It's really annoying.
Thanks for that, because I thought I was going crazy, because I did the same thing when I started getting, as I've been getting all these random prompts, I wanted to go see, like, where are they coming from? Is there any way I can report these? And I had the same thing. I'm like, I thought I used to see all the login attempts and now I don't see anything. And I was like, maybe I was getting Entra confused with my personal account, but they did used to have that and they took it away.
They very much cut it back and they removed a bunch of controls there. Like, they used to have stuff for like reporting things and all that. So it's down to the point now where even if you go into the docs for like reading about like what recent activity is, they go so far as to say, if you get an email about unusual activity and you're not sure if it's from Microsoft, just go ahead and like sign into your account. And even if you get one about an unusual activity that is from Microsoft, when you sign into your account, the detail's not there. There is no detail there. It is completely opaque. I don't know how they could make it better versus going back to the way it used to be. Like, show me every time you send me a push notification, show me why. Like give me a little bit of insight into where that was coming from. Like, because if I could even see like a user agent string and a timestamp, like I could see like, oh, that was Outlook from Mac OS at 3:25 p.m. on Friday. Oh, that was me. Like, I was just in Outlook. And oh yeah, I did get a little error pop up or things like that. So yeah. Anywho, that's my rant. Somebody else having your email address sucks. Passwordless is super annoying in a world of opaqueness. I think I think the vendors should err on the side of verbosity and let folks know, but unfortunately, they do not do that.
Yes. And report. Like, if I report that I'm not logging in from this particular one, I'm surprised how many keep coming through that appear to be coming from the same location. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you get around it, because ideally, I would say, you know what? I'm not in Germany, and frankly, I'm not in any country but the US. Any push notification from anything other than the US should be denied. Now, if I travel, I'd want a way to open that back up. But for now, like, I should not even be having to deal with those push notifications. It's interesting.
It's weird. Actually, for my Microsoft account, I think I'm at the point where, like, at least for my consumer account, because of like the state it's in.
I was going to say consumer accounts is where I have this problem more than my business one.
Definitely the most there. But for that, I would actually prefer to be able to turn off Authenticator. Like, if I have another passwordless mechanism, so if I've got biometrics just through my phone with a pass key, or I have a YubiKey or something, give me the option to turn off Authenticator. You let me turn off my phone, like my phone number and OTP, let me turn off Authenticator. Like, don't force, I'm sorry, like that piece of garbage application, like down my throat and make it the only path in.
If you're managing file storage today, you've probably felt the pressure. Refresh cycles are harder to plan, costs and complexity are increasing, especially as file workloads scale across regions. That's why Microsoft customers trust Nasuni. As an Azure-certified software, Nasuni provides a global file system designed for enterprise-scale environments, keeping file data secure, governed, and accessible across Azure environments without added infrastructure complexity. It's the foundation to keep your unstructured data stable, even as your infrastructure evolves. To see how much you could save while keeping your initiatives on track, visit nasuni.com/TCO. That's NASUNI.com/TCO. You know what else people are having to deal with, Scott, and managing outside of authentication requests?
This was such a good transition to our main topic for the day.
It was.
Good job.
And agents. Agents are everywhere.
Agents are everywhere. So this is an interesting one. Like my day job, I think a lot about SDKs and REST APIs and things like that. And even in like my day job, I spend more and more of my time thinking about how agents interact with those things over humans as more and more stuff gets handed off. And I'm definitely like in that ecosystem. I think you're in that ecosystem as well, kind of being tied into even just like generic Microsoft 365. So if I'm just in Microsoft 365, let's say Copilot, I've got a researcher agent, I've got an analyst agent, I can connect to SAP, I can connect to consumer services like Canva, all these different things. And now that Cowork has GA'd, I think you start to see a little bit more probably usage and uptick there. It's becoming like more prolific, I think, to see agentic workflows, whether those are like true like bounded agents, they're just kind of fluffy declarative agents in M365 Copilot, whatever it happens to be, but agentic workflows augmenting more and more of just the day-to-day of what's going on there. So that raises an interesting question. In a world of agents, and likely more agents than humans that are in your organization, because there's an amplification factor of I'm one person and I might use 20 agents. How do you kind of know what's going on out there? How do you monitor? How do you respond? And I think largely like there's an argument to be made to say that agentic governance or agent governance is the new application governance space. So much like you might have been in like a world of MAM and managing to the applications that your users could use, now you're in the world of agents and you also have to manage to the agents that your users can use. Or maybe you're in a fully ungated world and you don't know what agents your users are using out there. And it's such a wide landscape and wide surface area for agents between Microsoft 365 Copilot, you got Copilot Studio. There's the whole just broader Microsoft security stack. And you kind of got to get out there and find a way to govern agents, either as applications or as, I guess, artifacts of your enterprise. and kind of part of your core business.
It's interesting because in some respects, I always thought about agent governance as also the new almost people governance, to your point, but agents are also apps and agents have to deal with sprawl. Governing agents is turning into, I feel like, a massive thing. Because to your point with apps, you have like, who can access this agent? Kind of like you'd have to manage apps. Who can log into it? What can they do with this agent? But then you also have agents running similar to people where it's the data issue is what data can these agents access and which agents can access which data and how do you protect data from agents? And then you have the sprawl aspect of it of, again, people just going out and adding agents, and you have like ghost agents now. The whole, in some respects, I would say it's turning into one of the more complicated things to govern because there's so many different aspects to it in terms of what agents can do and how people access them and how they do things and even how agents manage agents. You're getting into these things now where you have agent orchestrators that manage sub-agents, and agent governance, I feel like it's already started, but I feel like it's just going to continue to explode over the next, I don't know, months, years, as you try to figure out how to govern this.
So it's a very broad area. I think and it's not probably unfamiliar to most administrators. Like, you're used to governing specific aspects of your platform. So let's say maybe like app consent. Hey, I needed a new enterprise app registration created that came with an owner, came with a specific set of permissions on the graph, things like that. Maybe you had a Teams app, again, that had its own kind of construct. You had SharePoint, that had its own construct. So we're very used to dealing with the individual constructs, but when they start to get mishmashed into this one broader bucket, which has a whole bunch of different subcomponents, it becomes really hard. And I think this is where like Microsoft comes in with things like Agent 365 and says, hey, you need more of a control plane here for agents because it's an identity problem. So it's not just who is the agent, it's who and or what is the agent. Like, who created it is one question. Who can use it or who consume it is another question. What permissions does it have? Does it have different permissions in different modes? Okay, that's just identity, right? You have 5 questions right there. You've got this data access issue or kind of lack of visibility or something that you need to kind of figure out is, what's the data that these agents can retrieve? What are they allowed to do with that data? Do they transform it? Do they pass it on to another agent or another process? Are they just summarizing it? Like, when they go and do the retrieval, let's say you retrieved a bunch of sensitive business data and then you're telling that agent to summarize it in a table. Well, it might be interacting with like an LLM. So it could be ChatGPT or an Anthropic model or DeepSeek or whatever out on the side. So now you got to worry about not only what data it can retrieve, what it can summarize, what it can transform, but you also have to worry about leaks, like pretty big. You have an application problem because you don't always have visibility into not only like what are the connectors and tools and actions that these agents use, but also like what are the raw APIs. I've seen some things when I'm interacting with them because the LLM guides them into it. They'll say like, oh, hey, I don't see a tool for blah, 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 but I read the documentation for this thing and I think it's got a REST API. I'm just going to like go wild and see what I can get out of it with like an external service call. And again, you're back to data leaks, all that kind of stuff. You've got a lifecycle problem. So we had the identity problem of like who created it, who can use it. There's also a lifecycle problem in who approves it, who owns it, like how do you attribute ownership to an agent? When and or if should it be retired? What happens when the person who made the agent, like if it's a custom agent, what happens when they leave your organization? That's a big problem with things like Power Automate flows and everything else that's out there. But that was just a single space. Now you're in a multi-space kind of thing. And then there's just all the security stuff. So bad actors, malicious prompts, prompt injection, risky connectors, maybe there's like a mismatch in privileges and configuration of an agent. So you get this like creep aspect that goes in there. So it's really hard because the question, I think, used to be like, what are the apps that have access to my tenant? And you could kind of go scope that down and you could run in and you could start to wrap your head around that. But now the question is really different for administrators in these environments where you have to ask not only what are the apps, but now it shifts to what agents can access my tenant, what agents can act across my tenant. So it's not just about access in a single area, but it's also about like across the spread of tools, Teams, SharePoint, Exchange, all those things. What are the tools they expose? What are the tools they actually use? And what's the business data that they have access to and that they can reason over? So it just makes it so much more of like a heady thing. I think Microsoft is approaching this in a manner of saying, hey, we have things like Microsoft Agent 365, which start to lay a groundwork for a control plane for management of agents to help you kind of get there. So it's a path forward to observe, have some measurable governance, some sense of security with a agentic use in your organization. But even then, I think there's a lot of room to grow and a lot of space to kind of pick things up, because as much visibility as things like Agent 365 give you today, they don't give you a full 360 view yet.
And I think some of it is going to be, how do people start trying to get that view? And are people going to adopt Agent 365? Because to your point, it's going to pull in a lot of things. Like I go to my Agent 365 today, out of the box, I haven't done anything special, and I have 200, to your point about exponential growth, I have 295 agents in my organization. These are not...
And your organization, your tenant is tiny as far as like the number of users. It's not
exactly.
It's not like a 1,000-person org.
Mix of things. Like I've done some stuff with Dynamics 365, so I have a bunch of Dynamics 365 agents. And then I do have a few custom agents. I have the Microsoft agents like the Learn agent and the Planner agent and a SharePoint admin agent. And then it does show, and this is an interesting thing that it shows, is these are just agents that are registered with the service. It shows things like Databricks and Mural and Canva and Miro, where it's agents that are available. It doesn't necessarily mean they're connected, but it means they're registered with the service. But in order for agents to continue being registered, as people maybe do create ones that they're using, there's still SDKs and different things that custom agents, depending on where they're created, there's certain things that have to be done with those agents to get them to show up in Agent 365. If someone goes off and creates a certain agent somewhere and doesn't create the hooks to tie it into Agent 365, it may not show up. There are some things that are still in preview, like Registry Sync, which does allow you to start connecting supported third-party AI platforms and syncing third-party agents in. So like if you have agents out on Amazon Bedrock, Google Vertex, Salesforce Agentforce, Databricks Genie, you can set those up to start syncing those agents into Agent 365 too. But there is still also a level of adoption of, here's the tool, here's not a framework, but a platform we've given you to manage agents. There's still some of that onus on organizations to make sure all those agents are actually getting in there.
It's not the kind of go click a button and set it and forget it kind of thing that you need to kind of get in and figure out. Because I think it was hard enough to manage a tenant and the sprawl and everything else that came along with it. And now it's just that much more.
This episode is brought to you by Trusted Tech. If you're managing Microsoft 365, you already know licensing isn't simple. E3 versus E5, the brand new E7 licenses, Copilot security bundles, and with price changes coming in July 2026, the stakes are getting higher. Trusted Tech helps IT leaders make sense of their Microsoft 365 environment with a free licensing consultation. Their engineers analyze what you're licensed for and what you're actually using, and where you can optimize, whether that means consolidating security tools, preparing for Copilot, or eliminating wasted spend. Plus, they offer proactive and reactive support, which has been awarded yet another solution partner designation from Microsoft for support services. If you want a clear, data-backed plan that has helped over 7,500 subscribing customers save up to 20% on Microsoft 365 before your next renewal, visit trustedtech.team/MSCloudPro M365 and schedule your free consultation today.
So why don't we kind of maybe start with some of the basics and maybe take a step back and say, like, hey, like, what can you start to do with agent management in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center? So when you go in for kind of this governance aspect of Agent 365, which I don't know, it's a weird tongue twister. I keep wrapping my head and getting wrapped on it.
So for me, the first thing I do when I'm going into a client or even in my own environment is, I would say where I think most people should start, where I usually start, is actually looking at all agents and looking at that agent registry. And I will say, if you don't have Agent 365 licensed, I've compared this across a couple platforms. You get some of this, you don't get the full report. So if I go into Agent 365 and go look at all agents, it gives me the name of the agent, if it's available. So am I actually making this agent available to my users? The platform that it came from, so is it Copilot Studio? Is it third parties are just blank? Is it Foundry? Is it some of those other ones? But then I do start seeing interesting things. And this is the part that's always fascinating to me, is I can see the risk of the agent based on some criteria that Microsoft has established. I can see the active users and I can see the total sessions. So one of those very interesting things with me is I just go sort this agent registry by active users or by total sessions. So I can go in and see that I have 50 people using this HubSpot agent that are active users. And across those 50 users, maybe I have 500 total sessions. It starts giving me just some of that, before I even do anything else, it gives me some of that big picture of what agents have people started adding, because you can just go into Copilot and start adding agents. Maybe you have some added and you want to know, are people actually using them? It just starts to give you, again, that picture of here's what's out there. Here's what people are using.
I had a very different kind of take when I had stood up a tenant and was going through and looking at some of this. So I kind of approached it from the lens of, I guess maybe like even an internal like rubric for where does the greatest risk lie? So it wasn't so much about usage. It was more around what are the categories of these things. So if you see like Teams pop up in the list, do I need to worry about Teams right now? Or do I need to go worry about the third-party connector kind of thing? So if there was stuff in there, let's say that was like published by your organization, those might be a little bit safer, right? Like you've probably published them out there for a reason. They're like predictable to you. So you see them and you know what they are. There's the whole category of custom agents. So somebody in your organization created a custom agent in things like Copilot Studio, which there's a weird new backdoor into Copilot Studio. Like even if you haven't licensed users for it after they GA'd cowork. So maybe there's some things that you want to look out for there, or you're just interested in like, what are the parts of my organization that maybe have a little bit more maturity and are going and running with these things. Like my threat matrix for things that were like Microsoft agents. So whether it was Dynamics or internal component kind of thing. Hey, if it was developed by Microsoft and it was integrated with Microsoft, like that might not be my primary concern. I'd rather bubble up things like the external agents. So stuff that was created by either a third party, was maybe created by like a developer that a random business unit of yours went and spun up because, they were able to, or you didn't have the existing governance constructs in place and you're in your tenant already. So, and then from there, dial into usage and see. So like if I said, hey, the external or external partner agents and maybe custom agents created like within my org, those are my two biggest like vectors. Then I'll go sort by usage and see if you can kind of suss out who's doing what there.
And I guess maybe mine isn't necessarily usage, but it's looking for similar types of stuff as you based on usage. That's how I would phrase. That's what I'm looking more at as, again, if cowork shows up at the top of my list of usage, big deal. If Asana shows up and I'm like, I didn't even know anybody was using Asana in the organization, and now there's a bunch of sessions with the Asana agent, it's why? Or something that's risky. The other thing I think that's fascinating, and I don't know how much you've played with this, is once you find one of those agents, clicking on it and looking at all of the details inside of each one of those agents. I don't know how much it's a governance topic as much as it's a information as you're maybe assessing the risk of it, or you're assessing why is this agent there? What are people doing with it? Or if you need to, from the governance perspective, if you need to go in and start limiting who can use that agent.
Again, it's that weird mix of now I'm not worried about just users. I'm worried about APIs and what they consume. And so now you're back to the identity, the data access, that whole spread of things. And it's a lot of like cognitive load. So you can kind of see what Microsoft's doing by trying to make it easy to see. So, hey, cool, I got a single pane of glass. I've seen tenants where like that single pane of glass is overwhelming. Like it's not helpful. It's more like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have a heart attack just having to like consume this page and trying to figure out what do I need to do here, especially when you're not maybe you haven't read your way all the way through the documentation, or you haven't like fully started to consume these offerings. I think Microsoft's trying to like move the needle. I don't know if you've had a chance to play with the shadow AI component and some of the stuff that comes out of Frontier. So you've got this, if you're in the Frontier program, because hey, you're on the latest cutting edge of AI innovation here. It also opens up the shadow AI piece in the admin center there. And then that starts to get you information about like agentic harnesses in use within your organization. So let's say you had somebody who went out and installed like OpenClaw, things like that. I don't know if it can detect like some of the other harnesses like Hermes or things like that. But it's very much like preview capability, but helps you start to rationalize it just a little bit. So you're not having to like do everything yourself and have some of that overwhelming stuff. Because if you are in an established tenant and you were licensed already for Copilot, like you had an E7, right? Like we've talked about E7s in the past. So great, you upgraded those. All of a sudden, all your users are licensed for this stuff and they're just out there like doing whatever. And they've been running that way for 3 months, 6 months, a year. If you've never been in there, like it's going to be a little bit of an overwhelming experience.
I was hoping for more in Shadow AI. Maybe more is coming.
It's pretty bare bones today.
Mine has OpenClaw in it, which I can start detecting. And then it has a coming soon. And under coming soon, I have Olama in Poe desktop from Quora. So those are the only, I have one it can detect, 2 that are coming. I'm surprised there's not more in there. But again, we'll put our disclaimer on there of Frontier as up and coming. Think of Frontier as like beta preview type stuff. Hopefully we see more coming in there soon.
Or like where does Scout show? Because Scout's a harness, but it's not Shadow AI. But there's no other like dedicated pillar category, for harnesses or things like that. So
because Scout doesn't even show, Scout shows up nowhere right now in here.
It's a weird world. So maybe we should talk a little bit in the couple minutes we have left about kind of visibility into agents and what you can see about them. Because we kind of talked about high level, you can get in, you can see what agents are in use, the categories, things like that. But then when you actually have an agent that's out there, you can get a little bit of high-level detail about what the agent is. You get insights into the users, potentially data and tools, permissions for that agent, activity, things like that. So maybe we hop through a couple of those just for folks can get a sense of what they can dig into.
To me, this is super helpful when you're trying to dig into it. Like the details initially gives you things like when it was created. Has it been updated? Agents get updated over time as you build them. Who published them? Owners? What channels are they available in? So Asana, for example, I use Asana, so it's available for me in Copilot, it's available in Outlook, it's available in Teams, or the different channels. So where can people access it? Details really gives a good overview. It even gives you, like, if there's instructions with that agent, if it's tied to an environment, this is going to be more applicable to like a Copilot Studio agent. Which environment is it in? Just a good general overview of that agent. Users is more controlling it. So we talked about, like, again, from an application perspective, what does the agent have access to? Users is who is it installed for and who is it available to, or who is it shared with. So you can, like, if you're a developer and you've created it, you can just share an agent with somebody, but then available to is who can actually install Asana. Should it be shown to all your users, or are there just specific groups that should be allowed to install Asana? And then installed for is, do you actually want to pre-install it? All my users are going to get Asana by default. So it's a little bit, for me, it relates very closely to Intune when you have like required versus available. Installed is, this is required, everybody gets it. Available is, they don't have to have it, but if they want it, they have the ability to go add it to Copilot.
And that's back to the like analogy about applications, right? So agents are applications, but they're applications with like just a broader set of things that you need to go and look at. The other interesting thing about like that analogy of apps to agents to carry it forward is you've also got options around like agent availability and installation. So there's a difference between making an agent available and letting users discover it versus pre-installing or pushing an agent or agents out to a security group or a set of folks that are out there. So there's this kind of like, I made it available in visibility play, but users have to go self-install. And if they install, great, they needed it, versus I've made this agent or this agent, set of agents, whatever it is, it's actually like part of the user's job now, right? Like you push it out like you would push out an application through Intune or things like that.
You're out of time. Copilot needs to be deployed ASAP. But is your tenant really ready for it? Years of data, permissions, and users lurk in its shadows, ready to be exposed by AI. ShareGate Protect sees it all, so you can find the exposure risks, fix them fast, and deploy AI with confidence. Microsoft 365 Governance. We got this. Learn more at sharegate.com/governance. And then on the other side, again, going into applications, I'm going to jump over to the permissions tab. After you've looked at users or you want to do that, one of the other things you have is permissions that are very much like if you're looking at those enterprise apps, where it gives you, and again, Asana as an example, has channel read basic all, to read channel names and channel descriptions in Teams.
This is where you need to know like your graph permissions, because all of a sudden you're seeing permissions.
Scopes.
Like, I'm amazed they haven't, done a better job with abstracting the scopes. It's still like group.read.all, teams activity.send. So it's all this random stuff. And it makes sense when you see it, but does everybody actually know like what
that means?
Yeah, like what is user.read.all like versus another read.all scope or permission set that's out there kind of thing. So you end up in this world of like, there's probably, my experience has been like there's common permissions or like they're broadly applicable. Like there's a bunch of stuff out there that has things like user.read.all. So is like that okay in your organization that this thing can read your entire org? This thing can like, yeah, maybe it's a requirement of it. Maybe it's not a requirement of it, whatever it happens to be. And then you've also got the whole delegated permissions aspect of sometimes these agents act autonomously. So the agent is the agent, and sometimes they act on behalf of a user, and sometimes they do both at the same time.
Yes. And that's one, there's a few things I like in here. This does show delegated versus application there. The other thing I like here, and I don't think it shows it when you're dealing with enterprise apps or app registrations in Entra, is the last column does show privilege level. So if I'm looking at channel.readbasic.all, to your point, what does that mean? Should I be worried about it? Here it says that's a low privilege level. Okay, so if it's a low privilege level, I maybe don't know what it means. It does give it details. It says it reads channel names and channel descriptions on behalf of the signed-in user, but then it says privilege low versus chat.read-write. That's going to be a medium privilege. So as you're looking through this too, you still want to understand them, but you can get a nice scan of, are there a bunch of high privilege ones in here, or is it primarily just low privilege? What are those different privilege levels of those graph permissions?
There's another weird tab. We should talk about it when we have a couple minutes left. Agent certification or certification.
I'm waiting for mine to load. Agent certification, publisher attested. This is one I have some clients that are very concerned about.
Yes.
And it's super important to them is this gives a whole bunch of details on how is this agent certified according to different compliance regulations. So I have a sign up, so I'm going to keep going with it, is one you have, is it publisher attested? So for Asana, is this attested by a self-assessment reported by Asana?
So to be very clear, self-assessment by the publisher.
So this is Asana telling Microsoft.
Even for Microsofts, you'll see Microsoft certified versus, yes, an Asana or somebody else or SAP saying, yes, self-attestation. This is an area that I would love to see more transparency about what's actually checked in the self-attestation flow. Like, how does Microsoft verify that? Because there's call outs in the docs when you go in and read through this. So let me pull it up so I get it right. So Microsoft 365 certification reflects an independent security and compliance assessment that's valid for 12 months and helps confirm that the agent meets Microsoft standards for handling tenant data. Great. What's in that independent security and compliance assessment? And what is so, and it's self-attested for 12 months. What happens if Asana pushes an update and now they've broken their compliance on the way? Like, did you come back and review that update? That one's a little bit of a weird situation. And I get where Microsoft is. Like, there's no broad agent security consortium or something like that, where you can say, here's the open standards, here's the way this stuff goes. But hopefully the industry does coalesce there over time. You'd think they'd have to for regulated industry and all that. How
would they even go through certifying it? Because it says right in here when it's publisher attested that Microsoft makes no guarantees regarding accuracy. I mean, I suppose Microsoft could require certain documentation to be uploaded, but even when I go in, if I'm looking at something, an agent, how would I even go in and verify that it meets HIPAA, that it's high trust, that it's SOC 1 or SOC 2, other than just getting documentation? To get SOC 2, I know that when you have to go through a whole bunch of stuff, you get the certification. I don't know if Microsoft makes them upload it, but you do get things like HIPAA, where based on everything I've understood about HIPAA is there's no stamp of approval of once you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you're HIPAA compliant. It's a lot of focused on you need to make your best effort to protect this type of documentation. And one person's best effort might differ from another person's best effort. And it's really hard to actually stamp something. Even Microsoft 365. Microsoft 365 is HIPAA compliant. If you go in and do the right stuff, is Asana the same way when they say they're HIPAA compliant? Or there are other certain configurations you need to make? It's to your point, it's kind of vague. Some of these can be hard. Some of them are a little bit more straightforward. Like
I said, I hope it's one of those areas where the industry coalesces over time. Because today it's a little bit of a gut feeling of, all right, so I know who built the agent. Good. I was able to identify that. And like, how much do I trust that person or that publisher? And a little bit of light, like what's it been validated against kind of thing. I think it's no different probably than, or maybe analogous to like app stores, right? Like Google Play or Apple running the iOS or Mac app stores, right? Like, hey, customer signed it. They came in. They pushed it out, but that doesn't always prevent malicious apps or other things that are coming through. That might be a fun day, right? When the very first like malicious, like broad malicious agent comes through and somebody's like, oh, hey, I got to like yank this agent out of every tenant, kind of like publishers do with app stores and things like that.
Conditional access for agents, risky agent access policies and conditional access, Scott.
All sorts of things. So yeah, so I think this is like, just to wrap up, like this is an area for folks to go and look at, especially if you're in licensed environments and maybe you haven't had the time to dig into it. Like you should have access, I believe, to all this if you're on E7s and kind of latest and greatest there. And there are ways to license and get in. So if your tenants are configured for things like Copilot, for co-work and these things like that, it's worth at least browsing through and seeing what's out there if you haven't been in there. And hopefully no like big like red flags or overreactive decisions to take, but having some of that visibility and starting to kind of build some of that confidence. Because like I said, you're going from managing like these individual constructs to managing a whole bunch of bundled things at once. It's a lot more to wrap your head around and stay on top of. And then you're very much trusting in vendors and folks like Microsoft to kind of give you the tools with the insights and visibility that you need.
Yep. And really starting to think about what does agent governance look like at your organization? How are you going to start, not just looking through this, but how are you going to start managing those agents? What are people allowed to do? I feel like it's also one of those topics that a lot of people have even put much thought into yet, is what does agent governance look like for our organization?
It's a rapidly evolving thing, and probably even more important, and I'm sure we'll wrap back around on this topic sometime in the future, but as all this stuff's transitioning to consumption-based billing versus kind of like the broader unlimited usage, now there's also the aspect of, hey, that thing that you deployed to your users 6 months ago that, I don't know, let's say it costs $20 in usage per user per month, like GitHub Copilot, for example, all of a sudden could be costing like thousands, tens of thousands. I've seen some really wonky bills and threads flying around on the Reddits of the world and things like that, where some of this stuff is going off the rails for folks. So there's also a little bit of like a cost management play for organizations as to like who's using what, when are they using it, things in the world of, certainly more in the world of consumption billing than it kind of was in the past a couple of months building up to this. For sure. Cost management is one that'll be another topic for another day. I've started playing with it though, because there's a bunch of stuff that's going to change. We'll have to fit that. By the time we come out with a new episode, it will have already been implemented. There's a bunch of stuff that changes on July 1 in terms of availability if you don't have some of that set up. The world continues to change. Another topic, another day, Scott. But for now... Another topic, another day. All good. I'm going to go to a graduation open house and hang out with my family up in Michigan. All right. Good luck. Have fun on the peninsula, Ben. All right. Thanks. I will do that and enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.